You will not believe what some devoted Nintendo fans are calling the most daring twist in the saga of portable gaming. The moment our treasured library from the original Nintendo Switch seemingly collided with the new generation Nintendo Switch 2. Yes, rumor had already hinted that our cherished old favorites would enjoy a comfortable ride on the fresh hardware, but the reality has proven far more dramatic. In the midst of excited midnight launch lines, glowing product reviews, and flashy commercials, a quieter but urgent question emerged. Is backward compatibility just a magical promise, or is it a technological minefield waiting to blow up your expectations? Today we dive headfirst into that crucial puzzle and dissect the exhilarating, the frustrating, and the downright perplexing factors shaping this next stage in Nintendo history. We will explore the engineering wizardry behind the new chipset, investigate the real stories of updated game patches, and ask the burning question: should we keep our old hardware for those beloved classics? No matter where your Nintendo loyalties lie, get ready for an emotional roller coaster that cuts right into the heart of what it truly means to embrace a console upgrade. Picture this explosive scene. You have just unboxed the Nintendo Switch 2, inhaled that new hardware aroma, and popped in your older copy of an adventure that once dazzled you in 2017. Perhaps you hope to see sharper visuals and faster load times, or maybe you want to rekindle your original sense of wonder. Then, to your shock, you realize the game runs differently in ways you never saw coming. In some cases, it feels surprisingly more fluid, as though it just discovered a reserve store of power. Yet in other moments, it stutters at the most inconvenient times, or reveals a bizarre bug you never encountered on the first Nintendo Switch. Unsettling questions flood your mind. Have the patches come through to fix and enhance older titles? Or will you need to pay extra to unlock the potential of the sequel hardware? Do these issues hint at a rocky future for beloved franchises? Or do they only scratch the surface of an epic leap in gaming performance? We will delve into all of these, unraveling the story one mesmerizing detail after another. To understand how we reached this crossroads, we need to recall one of Nintendo's proud legacies, transitioning from console to console while protecting our cherished libraries. Think back to the long history of hardware transitions, from Game Boy Advance to Nintendo DS, or from Wii to Wii U, each with varying degrees of success in preserving older titles. Some systems included profound hardware carryovers that made older games feel right at home, while others used clever illusions like software emulation. The Nintendo Switch 2, however, is forging a unique path, thanks to its collaboration with a new generation Nvidia chipset under the hood. Gone are the days of a motherboard that mirrors its ancestors' exact architecture. Instead, we now get a translation layer that intercepts older Switch 1 game data and recasts it for the new console on the fly. This approach, while brilliant, is not completely the same as having a native or emulated environment. It resides in between, delivering a swirl of advantages and complications that can leave unsuspecting gamers reeling. Before we proceed, let us fire off our first friendly recommendation. If you become fascinated by these hidden tales of hardware brilliance, show your support and stay engaged. Perhaps give that helpful nod like a thumbs up to let everyone know you value deep, behind-the-scenes explorations of gaming's biggest evolutions. After all, a tiny gesture can fuel our passion to take even bolder journeys into the realm of console mysteries. The results of this translation approach have come across as an unpredictable cocktail. Many Switch 1 games that struggled with dynamic performance ceilings now appear reinvigorated on Switch 2, free to breathe the crisp air of extra graphical oomph. Some mid-era re-releases, such as Quake from id Software, hid modern graphical toggles that hammered performance on the original system but run butter-smooth on Switch 2. The same can be said for Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, which included an advanced overhead called Unleash the Beast that once caused notable frame dips on the original Switch. Here, it seems nearly unstoppable, unleashing a flurry of energetic combos with minimal slowdown. Yet do not let the success stories lull you into believing it is a clean, universal upgrade across the board. Many developers shipped their Switch 1 games with locked graphical modes, meaning that resolution, frame rate targets, and other immovable constraints remain the same on Switch 2, even though the hardware can easily handle higher fidelity. As if that were not enough, the portable form factor on Switch 2 demands upscaling from 720p to its sharper 1080p display for older games. For certain styles, especially pixel art platformers like Sonic Mania, this upscaling can look muddled, occasionally introducing image ghosting or softness never perceived on the original hardware. Devotees of crisp, retro artistry may discover that the new hardware, ironically, can be a step sideways for beloved throwback titles. Finally, you have the reality of mandatory patches. While some come free, others feature price tags between $10 and $20, promising revitalized textures, shadow fidelity, and more. For top-tier adventures like The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, or Tears of the Kingdom, fans can pay an extra $10 each, or opt into a Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack subscription for $50 per year in the United States to claim the boost. The dynamic is that each scenario feels like stepping into uncharted territory. Some third-party developers are all in, offering free patching for their Switch 1 bestsellers, so that Switch 2 can truly flaunt the advanced power it wields. Others, though, have not uttered even a hint about supporting older catalog entries. One dramatic example is Sonic X Shadow Generations, which arrived as a brand new release on Switch 2 at full retail cost, even if you owned a near-identical version on the original console. So, the question stands, do certain publishers see this as an excuse to demand more money, or do they merely struggle with the complexities of rewriting code for a brand new chipset? The debate rages on, fueled by social media chatter and heated commentary on gaming forums. Each patch is either lauded as a righteous courtesy or lambasted as an unfair penalty, and the gaming community collectively wonders, will every older Switch gem eventually get its shining Switch 2 revival? Or will most slip into a purgatory of stutters and outdated resolutions? In some ways, the biggest measure of success lies in whether these older titles truly run as stable or more stable on the new hardware. And let us be clear, many of them do exactly that. Bayonetta 3, a stylish and bombastic action title that once had the Switch 1 teetering near the edge of its performance limits, now thrives at a locked 60 frames per second in all but the most explosive scenes. Marvel Ultimate Alliance, a beat-em-up that was often derided for chugging along at an inconsistent rate, has likewise traded its stuttering moments for a significantly smoother experience. The new Nvidia chipset is not just a step beyond the original Switch design. It is more like an entire leap over the fence into the next yard of processing capability. Meanwhile, the Switch 2's variable refresh rate in portable mode can even push certain dynamic games such as Minecraft above 60 frames per second when the console has the overhead. Sadly, such technical fireworks are not always guaranteed. Deep within the library exist peculiar corner cases where Switch 2 mysteriously falters, even in titles that never threatened the original console's limits. Ubisoft's Trials Rising, for instance, is rumored to show small but noticeable frame dips on Switch 2 in certain crowded track segments. Another example is Wolver Blade, a beat-em-up that might crash or freeze in menus you have navigated countless times on Switch 1 without a single hiccup. And speak of a headache, the first-person looter-shooter Borderlands 3 can occasionally flicker or tear, as though the translator were struggling to maintain a stable sync between frames. Curiously, none of these titles are flagged on Nintendo's official compatibility watch lists, so we can only guess that more subtle issues lurk deep in the translation layer, waiting for further patches or developer interventions. At this stage, you might be guessing that it is better to keep both consoles on standby, at least until you know which older games are bulletproof on the new gear. That is a perfectly reasonable position, especially for players whose hearts ache when they see a beloved title stutter or glitch out of nowhere. If you are the type to cling to that meticulously curated collection of niche shooters, indie puzzle hits, or classic revival ports, the question of preserving the exact experience of Switch 1 might sound critical. Will these bug fixes stack up over time? Or will they remain sporadic, leaving half your library unoptimized? The answer remains partially unknown, though many fans argue that Nintendo and third-party developers will keep grooming their older catalogs in the months after this console's launch, especially if it sparks fresh sales in the eShop. Another scenario is drastically simpler. You might have never touched some of these older Switch 1 games, but become newly interested now that you own the Switch 2. The hype around patched versions of The Legend of Zelda duology has been so compelling, for instance, that fresh copies of Breath of the Wild soared in popularity. Additionally, the promise of crisp 2160p resolution when the Switch 2 is docked, drastically improved shadow quality, and snappier loading times is luring new adventurers to Hyrule. No Man's Sky also stands tall in the patch parade, boasting far denser terrain detail and improved frame pacing, while Fortnite flaunts nearly locked 60 frames per second in portable mode. In that sense, the console generations have fused into an ecosystem that encourages new players to discover old favorites, now newly optimized for next-generation power. One can hardly discount that sense of synergy, even as we fret about the unpatched games gathering dust in the background. Here comes a second friendly invitation. If you enjoy these roller coaster analyses that combine tech deep dives with the raw emotions of discovering gaming's best secrets, remember to stay connected for more. A simple show of support is always greatly appreciated, and it goes a long way toward ensuring we can continue to crack open the hidden lore behind your favorite franchises. Still, the question persists in every discussion. Is it worth giving up your original Switch 1 altogether? The short answer is complicated. For hundreds of older games without advanced features, or that never tested the old hardware's limits, you may enjoy equal or improved performance on Switch 2, possibly with zero tweaks required. On a daily basis, that probably means you can safely say goodbye to the original console. Yet for certain titles, or for collectors who demand flawless resolution and glitch-free menus, it might be wiser to wait. Then again, some worry that the cost of repeated patch fees could balloon, turning the Switch 2 library into a labyrinth of purchased add-ons. Worth noting, though, is that many such patches remain optional. If you are content with the raw files from Switch 1, you can still pop them in and play without shelling out additional funds. On the subject of free updates, we have already seen Splatoon 3 teased with improvements on Switch 2, although details remain hush-hush. Will that patch expand how the game renders multiplayer matches, or fix the occasional input lag that once plagued Switch 1 users? We can only guess, but the excitement is real. Meanwhile, forward-looking fans speculate that if older titles do see an uptick in sales through Switch 2 players, developers could be incentivized to shape up new or improved versions of their back catalogs. An old hidden gem relaunching with a fresh resolution patch and stable frame rate might just spark an entire second wave of popularity. We have already seen that effect with Red Faction Guerrilla Re-Mars Teared, which soared in the eShop sales charts after word spread that the Switch 2 ran it with far fewer drops in performance. Perhaps older titles like Marvel Ultimate Alliance, once hindered by performance struggles, could also see renewed life. All of this leads us to the larger perspective. Nintendo has placed a massive bet on blending the lines between generations. By using a translation layer for older games, the company is effectively making a statement that your original Switch library is not obsolete, but also not guaranteed a pristine new life. That unpredictability, though it might cause confusion, also represents a bridge between the past and the future. Do not forget that some other console transitions in gaming demanded absolute leaps where older software was entirely unsupported. In that sense, the Switch 2's partial, or sometimes messy backward compatibility is still a big step forward. The question is whether Nintendo will be able to smooth out the cracks in a timely manner, forging a stable environment that does not put the onus on players to remain watchful for random bugs or stutters. The next year or two may well define how successfully the company can maintain older titles while pushing the Switch 2 to become a contemporary icon. Finally, we stand at a pivotal time for the Switch 2's identity. Developers new and old are tinkering with the advanced chipset, seeking ways to harness its fabled next-level potential. Fans are discovering the joys of playing previously erratic Switch 1 releases with newfound stability. Creators like Sega, Ubisoft, and Nintendo itself must decide which older gems deserve full-blown patches that cost money and which are better served by a free or partial patch. The entire ecosystem hums with the possibility that older favorites will find fresh audiences in a console that is not weighed down by the original Switch's performance constraints. And yet, the thorns remain sharp. Should a game that ran at subpar resolution remain locked in that fidelity, even though the console can clearly handle more? Will a developer of a smaller budget indie game invest the time to patch a multi-year-old title for a rumored spike in sales? Or will they quietly move on, leaving their older releases in a halfway optimized state? Many in the community are crossing their fingers, hoping that in the coming months, Nintendo will unify the approach with an accessible global toggle or more advanced backward compatibility settings that solve issues of upscaling for pixel-based titles. Meanwhile, others remain realistic, acknowledging that each game's code may demand specialized tweaks. As time marches forward, the Switch 2 story continues to unfold, a dynamic tapestry of engineering feats, software mysteries, and impassioned gamers hungry for a console that merges the wonders of the past with the potential of the future. If you have braved the joys and disappointments of this console so far, you may already feel the rush of excitement and uncertainty that defines the Switch 2 era. With so many disparate outcomes, it is clear that backward compatibility is neither a neat single-sentence promise nor a lost cause. It is an evolving journey, one that will test the perseverance of developers, the